Hey YouTube, I'm John Conti. I'm the Executive Vice President at Wade College, and today I am going to take my students from my social media marketing class through their final exam review. So we've spent the last 3.5 months focusing on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, Snapchat, LinkedIn, Google+, YouTube, Pinterest, Tumblr, Flickr. We've also talked about up and coming platforms, and we had a Google Analytics training to look at measuring the metrics and key performance indicators that social media delivers. And I want to spend the next maybe 45 minutes going through the most important components of the course in the spirit of getting my students ready for the final exam. So turn this around, and I have prepared kind of a greatest hits PowerPoint presentation that is going to take us through all of these areas. And I actually want to start with a handout. So just as a reminder, here's the handout, but I've got it in my presentation about the four important quadrants, if you will. And another way I'll say it is sort of the four needs that social media takes care of for us. And the first is social community. And obviously there are platforms like Facebook and Twitter where we do find community in the interactions with other people, whether they be family member, friends, or even in interacting with businesses. There's social commerce, and I think a great example is a platform like Groupon. Social publishing, which we have all experienced a lot this trimester, and we've experienced that through the maintenance of our own blogs. So whether that be Blogger or WordPress, or even Tumblr or Flickr, and then social entertainment. And while this example is not on the slide, I think a great example would be Pokemon Go. It's a great example, current example. Now, before we get into the management of a social media marketing department, I wanted to talk about an article that we discussed early on about Facebook Live. And I just wanted to recap four parts of the article, the four most important components of the article. I'm sure we talked about this in class, but it was such a long while ago. And the first component was that the idea of Facebook Live isn't necessarily to compete directly with television, which is kind of interesting because obviously Facebook is using Facebook Live to increase engagement and to increase the time that people spend, and maybe even the number of logons in a day. But it isn't necessarily to compete against traditional television. There's also the second point I want to make is that there's no ad play to tempt TV marketers. So Facebook Live isn't necessarily there to sell advertising space directly. The third point the article makes is that it really is about retaining users and increasing their Facebook use through the course of a given day, point that I just made. And then finally, a topic maybe we didn't talk about in class is the concept of Facebook paying publishers to actually use Facebook Live to create content that feeds the live feed, and that maybe complements people's regular, everyday, interesting or uninteresting live posts that they're making. So I thought that was kind of interesting. The other article I wanted to remind you that we looked at from Womenswear Daily were the fashion companies that have been prolific in the maintenance of their social media accounts. Companies like Nike and Calvin Klein and Zara topping the list of just the number of followers across all their different social media channels. So please do review this article as well from Womenswear Daily. Okay, so now I gave you in one of your first packets a plan to social media marketing. And obviously it starts with things like conducting appropriate market research to really understand who it is that you're marketing, what you're marketing, who the target audience is, But in terms of really building the social media plan, I think the most important component is identifying all of the third-party social media tools that will be used. And not just the social media platforms themselves, but the other platforms that will help manage those social media platforms. So let's start that conversation by talking about HootSuite, which is, as you all know, a complete social media dashboard. We watched a video about how HootSuite works. And I think it is an incredibly useful tool as just kind of a big picture social media platform. We also talked about social sharing services like Add This. We talked about different monitoring tools, the most basic of which is really just Google Alerts. If you don't remember, Google Alerts is kind of this real-time sign-up service that Google offers, and it basically gives you all of your press clippings, digital press clippings, in real time as they happen. So, if the New York Times writes an article about your company and you've set a Google alert for it, Google's going to serve you with that article, in your inbox. We also talked about distribution tools like having an RSS feed, so that people can connect to the content that you're providing, and we talked about URL clipping tools. So a company like TinyURL, which takes a giant, long, ugly, user unfriendly URL and shortens it so that it's more user friendly, so people will either remember how to type it in or just the link is better looking. So those are the kind of the pieces of the social media marketing plan. If you're an e-commerce company, then obviously you have to identify an e-commerce tool like Shopify. And then obviously you want your website to be crawled by Google Webmaster Tools. And I think we did an example of this in class where we go to google.com/add-URL, and this is basically the way you request for your website to be crawled. I'm assuming some of you probably did this for your own blogs by getting Google Webmaster Tools to acknowledge that your website exists. Okay, the other thing that I wanted to talk about before we go on PowerPoint wise is from this textbook, Social Media Marketing Workbook, we talked about different posting strategies. So the tone that companies can take when making their posts, whether it doesn't really matter what platform we're talking about, can take one of a few different strategies. So one example of a posting strategy is to focus on sentimental posts. And just to give you an example, posting something about a mom around a Mother's Day promotion. Another posting strategy is to focus on utility posts, either explaining how to do things or how to cook something. I think back to like those tasty videos that you see a lot of times on Facebook and whatnot. Those are utility posts. There are also counterintuitive posts. So basically like either debunking things or kind of a did you know, or an example of that would be, I saw recently, did you know that rawhide chews for dogs are actually not safe, and click here to find out why. So that would be kind of counterintuitive, things that people don't necessarily know. Another posting strategy could be focusing on humor, funny posts, things that make people laugh, whether it be videos or images. Another posting strategy is getting engagement through either surveys or polls or contests or quizzes. We see lots of those quizzes, what kind of whatever are you? Those are really just tools to serve people advertisements, obviously. Quotes, another thing really popular across platforms like LinkedIn, serving people quotes that are either sentimental or things that make you think. And then finally, and this is so appropriate for the election time that we're in, outrage, posts that really focus on outrage. Click like if you are offended by, the following, things like that. So those are just examples of the types of different tones that social media posts can kind of focus on. Okay, so let's start with our first social media platform, which is Facebook. So Facebook obviously has the largest number of users, of active users. In fact, I think I tried to make the point in class that Facebook has more users than the population of China. Right now, China has about 1.4 billion citizens, and Facebook has about more than 1.5. I think the number is really up to 1.6 billion users. So that's pretty impressive. And nearly half of all Facebook users actually log on any given day. However, the time that they spend on Facebook is short, 18 to 40 minutes worth of attention, whereas certain other social media platforms have kind of a wider average time span. As a marketer, it's important to understand these 3 points about Facebook. And the first is how robust Facebook makes segmenting an audience, meaning that you can tailor your dollars to focus on very, very specific demographic, psychographic, and certainly geographic filtering that you can do. So you can serve ads and obviously boosted posts to people based on their interests, based on locations that they've traveled, based on things that they have favorited on Facebook. So it really is the antithesis of an outdoor advertising where you really don't necessarily, outside of geographics, get to segment who you're targeting. The second thing is cost management. So Facebook is one of the most cost-effective marketing tools because it works on a pay-per-click model. You really do get to control your max spend. You get to set a max spend, and you also get to set a length of time for the campaign. So you're able to kind of manage that amount of spend over a certain period of time. And then the third thing is engagement. So while Facebook doesn't quite have the engagement of, let's say, an Instagram, nobody comes close to the algorithm that Facebook has created. And we read an article about EdgeRank, and I want to make sure that I highlight this because it's probably one of the things that makes marketing on Facebook so robust. Facebook's algorithm, called EdgeRank, has 3 components, and we should go over these 3 components because they're super important. The first is the affinity score. The second is the weight for an edge type. And the third is time decay. So let's talk about each one of those things. So the affinity score is basically how close you are to the person serving you a message. So just as an example, I mean, if you're friends on Facebook with your brother and you interact often, obviously there's going to be a higher weight for a comment, for a post if your brother is the person that's posting it. The second one is edge weight. And so in a nutshell, edge weight measures the interaction between a user and a post. So obviously liking something on Facebook might take you a second or two to do, whereas commenting on a post might take you 3 or 4 or 5 seconds or more, depending on how much energy you're investing in the comment. So a comment weighs more than a like, and a share weighs more than a like. Stopping your scrolling to hover or to just to pause to read or look at something weighs more than obviously scrolling past something. So that's what edge weight is. Basically, it gives weight to the things that should be more relevant to you because you're taking the time to interact with it. The last one is time decay, and this is probably the simplest to explain in any social media content. It is the older something is, the less important it becomes. So Facebook places value on new, fresh content and ensuring that that new, fresh content is served first over older content that may sit and become stale on Facebook's news feed. So that is essentially the big 3 things that you need to know about Facebook. Now, this infographic that I shared with the class some time ago, and it's in I believe it's in your packet, and I also have posted this on my blog. So this will be in the Facebook entry that I wrote on my blog, DallasSnobblog.com. We compared Facebook and then Google, the Google Display Network. So important topics to know about each of these. So obviously Facebook and Google drive a majority of the traffic on the internet. But each does something better, and I want you to know the difference, okay? So with Google, let's start on the Google side. Google has a broader reach, meaning that it serves about 180 billion ad impressions each month, which is lower than what Facebook does, but it reaches 90% of all internet users, where Facebook only reaches about half of the entire internet. So Google has a broader reach. Facebook serves more impressions, meaning that it has over 1 trillion page views a month, so it can serve so many more ads to people because of the length of time, obviously, that they're using it, and also the number of active monthly users. So again, the Facebook game is more about number of impressions as an advertiser, and the Google game is about getting a broader reach, a wider target audience. Okay. For each of the social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, definitely you need to know what the campaign strategies are. So with Facebook, there is the most robust number of different campaign strategies, advertising campaign strategies. You can boost your posts, you can promote your Facebook page, you can get more likes, you can get people to go to your website. A new thing for Facebook recently is the idea you can serve multi-product ads that focus on, a carousel of a number of things. You can increase conversions on your website, whatever that might mean to you, whether it's getting leads, whether it's selling something, whether it's spending a certain amount of time on your website. So Facebook offers marketers a really robust number of different ad strategies on their page. Okay, so we talked about the Facebook algorithm, and I explained to you what EdgeRank is. So be sure that you either review the article or you can watch one of the blogger videos that I shared in class. Remarketing, so let's talk about that. And the reason I bring up remarketing in the Facebook lecture is because Facebook really has cornered the market on this idea. So what is remarketing? Obviously, when you go to a marketer's site, they are placing a cookie on your computer connected to your IP address. And when you leave their site, especially when you leave that company's site and don't convert, meaning you don't either make a purchase or sign up for something, that company, more often than not, is going to bid on serving you ads on other websites with the intention, or the hope at least, of getting you to become a future consumer of the product. So Facebook, a large part of Facebook's advertising revenue is this idea of remarketing, where companies will bid on the right to serve you an ad on your Facebook, during your Facebook experience. So that, the technology is pretty amazing. Okay, let's switch gears to Twitter. So Twitter, we watched a really awesome, I think, video about 10 things that you didn't know about Twitter, how Twitter got its name, how the FBI and the United States government and the United States president and the Library of Congress are all involved in monitoring Twitter. Just really, really interesting stuff, how many languages Twitter is usable in. So be sure that you review this video. Again, the link is on it's actually on the top of my Twitter blog. And familiarize yourself with the information in the video, okay? Important Twitter facts real quick. Get the little pictures up here. A large minority of people who use Twitter passively. Essentially, they use Twitter just to follow companies or brands, but don't necessarily engage with tweets, which is interesting. Twitter is the second largest social media platform, so it falls just under Facebook in terms of traditional social media. I don't include YouTube in that video, in that list. And it's a microblog, meaning that every post is, as you all know, 140 characters or less. And the cool thing is that since the majority of Twitter use is through handheld devices, Twitter is text friendly, and you can use Twitter through text message, so you don't necessarily need internet service to even use Twitter. The founder is Jack Dorsey. We watched a video about how Jack Dorsey manages both Twitter, and in the afternoons of every day, he manages his other company, Square. And that was sort of an interesting conundrum of time management and everything else. Okay, do familiarize yourself, if you don't already know, Twitter's marketing features. Obviously, promoting links in your tweets to drive people to your business, using the connect tab, using hashtags, hosting a Twitter chat. It should be called a Twitter chat, which helps other people use your hashtag and brand your company. So those are important. Like I said, advertising campaign objectives. So with Twitter, you don't necessarily get to boost you don't get to boost a post that you've already created, but you do create tweets that are specifically for additional engagement. So that's one campaign objective. You might also promote. So you'd also promote things like website clicks, app installs if you are a company that serves an app, or if for people who have your app already, you may serve a tweet that kind of focuses on re-engagement within an app. Video views were newer when we had looked at Twitter earlier in the term, serving people obviously videos that are like specifically in Twitter's native video player. And then things like getting more followers on Twitter and also collecting leads, so getting people's either email addresses or phone numbers, to become a prospect for your company. We looked at this interesting infographic about Twitter, and I just want to highlight a couple of things, really all of which focus on building engagement in Twitter. Some of the interesting stuff is things like the engagement in Twitter spikes on weekends, 17% higher on weekends. And tweets with link images get double the engagement rate, and shorter tweets get 17% more engagement. So obviously crafting your message to be engaging and brief, so there's always a brevity that's tough to achieve on Twitter, is going to result in a more successful experience on Twitter. Okay, now we move on to Instagram, and I want to just adjust this one second. So Instagram now has more than 400 million users since they posted this on their advertising website some time ago, probably closer to 500 million, and those people share 80 million photos a day, which is mind-blowing. But the big news with Instagram is the idea that Instagram's engagement is literally 58 times higher than Facebook and 120 times higher than Twitter, which is pretty impressive. So basically, Instagram has a 4.21% user interaction with brand posts, meaning that people are more likely to engage by either liking or whatever the case is on Instagram. We talked about the founder of Instagram, who is Kevin Systrom. We looked at actually two articles about Kevin Systrom. One was how really Foursquare, which you probably know is that sort of check-in app, was kind of the knockoff version of what Instagram became. Instagram really knocked off Foursquare, and we looked at basically how Kevin Systrom got started and what his catalyst for success was. I also want to share with you this article about I guess the keys to Instagram. We talked about brand engagement. Really, I think what makes this article interesting is its advice about quality of photographs. So let's go there. We'll start backwards because it's at the end of the article. It talks about using single colors, open backgrounds, single dominant colors, like I said, high lightness versus darker images, a high amount of background space, single colors like the color blue, and lots of texture, high texture levels in photographs. All of what I just described generates a lot more engagement on Instagram than than the opposite, than low lit pictures or things that have very cluttered, minimal amount of space, or things that are extremely colorful, or smooth and slick versus textured and rough. So that's really the kind of photography that you want to focus on in Instagram. The other thing is there are sort of two non-photography pieces of advice to get better engagement on Instagram, and one is adding location. People really want to know where others and where marketers are, and so adding a location drives 79% higher engagement. And the other is using @mentions in captions. That earns 56% more engagement in Instagram. So those are interesting marketing ploys to get what you need out of Instagram. Okay, ad objectives. So similar to Twitter and not as robust as Facebook, your ad objectives on Instagram originally just focused on these three: getting clicks to your website, obviously, getting your mobile app installed if that is applicable, or viewing a video. And then more recently, Instagram added page post engagement, website conversions, and then mobile app, re-engagement as additional ad objectives. Okay, some specifics. I think we actually covered all of this in the article. It's got the highest engagement. Comments, that half of all Instagram comments are posted in the first 6 hours. So obviously, again, just like with Facebook, so much weight is placed in new content versus content that has become stale. The @mentions and then location drive more engagement. And then again, open background, single dominant colors, and I want to just add one more: textured photography adds more engagement. So you'll remember we watched a video about this blogger, and the blogger went into a lot of her own sort of photography advice. And a lot of it really does reflect the specifics that I just shared with you a minute ago. Okay, now let's talk about Snapchat. So while Snapchat is the smallest of all of the social media platforms that we just talked about, and the smallest of every single one except for Google Plus, of all of the platforms we're going to talk about in the course, Snapchat actually was the fastest growing last year, which is pretty exciting. It only has 100 million active users right now, but 86% of them are young, and 41% of all young people have a Snapchat account. So obviously there's massive implications there for marketers who are looking to attract millennials. Recently, Snapchat dropped its corporate marketing sort of like minimum threshold from $750,000 to $100,000. So this enables smaller businesses really to begin to get into or to add Snapchat to their marketing budget. And Snapchat has a 5-time higher click-through rate, which means that young people are not alienated by the types of advertising, the types of marketing that they're being served in Snapchat. In fact, they're engaging with that advertising at 5 times a greater rate, which is pretty cool. We talked about the two founders of Snapchat, Evan Spiegel and Bobby Murphy. We talked about all their stories, and we'll keep this G-rated since it's going on YouTube. But the app originally started as a platform called Peekaboo. Please review your notes so you understand what that means. And we also talked about how the founders met on multiple occasions with Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, and they rejected both $1 and $3 billion offers from Facebook, although I suppose Facebook had the last laugh since they have since implemented a lot of features that look and smell a lot like Snapchat. Again, Snapchat, starting with 127 users, became the biggest growing social media messaging app last year. So just incredible growth. Okay, the big news with Snapchat was the March of this year update, and they added a good almost dozen new features, and let's just go through those real quick. and obviously be familiar with what these are. So they added Face Swap, which I think a lot of us became obsessed with, and they added Snapchat Memories, and that I think was maybe the most controversial of moves because it made a lot of users feel that Snapchat was getting away from sort of its core, its core message of images that sort of self-implode. They bought Bitstrips for $100 million. They added Yext, which is sort of a geo check-in software, or technology, I should say. They upgraded their chat to really include better video chat. And just a more robust chat platform. They added emoji stickers for video, which the stickers can animate and move. Force touch, just to give a physical better experience. New lenses, new filters, new rewind. So be familiar with all of that. Now, there are 3 specific marketing products that Snapchat sells, and that is Snap Ads, sponsored lenses, and geo filters. And I've provided a handout for you on that topic, along with a lengthy list of case studies, companies that have had positive experiences with their Snapchat advertising campaigns. So just to go through the 3 products, there's Snap Ads, which is that 10-second vertical full screen video ad that Snapchat will serve. There are sponsored lenses, and we'll talk in a second about Gatorade having a successful go with the lenses, and that's where just some artwork can be applied on top of a user's photo. And then there are geo filters, and geo filters are also artwork that is specific to either an event space or some kind of other city or something like that. The Gatorade, and let me just grab this here, case study. Everybody knows the Gatorade, when they pour the Gatorade on the winning coach at the end of a football game, let's say. So Gatorade created a sponsored lens that was a national campaign, and people could apply that lens onto a photo of themselves. And they had 165 million total views and an 8-point increase in purchase intent for Gatorade, and it was a wildly successful early approach at a national sponsored lens for a big brand like Gatorade. Okay, we move on to LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is not only the largest professional network, but it's also the oldest of all of the platforms that we are going to talk about. Started in 2003 by Reid Hoffman. He came from PayPal. He was involved in the launch of PayPal. And LinkedIn has about half a billion users. Obviously, majority of them are adults. In fact, 1/3 of all US adults are on LinkedIn. Majority of them are male. 41% of all the world's millionaires use LinkedIn. I find that super interesting. And 80% of companies use LinkedIn as their primary recruiting tool, even though LinkedIn is not supposed to take the place, obviously, of a recruiter. And then profiles that show skills get 13 more times the views, and then the average surf is only 17 minutes, so shorter than even Facebook, and a lot of that surf time happens during the work day, which is interesting. The most overused word on LinkedIn is the word motivated, and we read an interesting article about the very important news this term about LinkedIn being purchased by Microsoft for $26.2 billion. And I just want to make 2 points about this article. The first is that the exciting thing about this $26.2 billion acquisition is that Microsoft plans to take LinkedIn's technology and its database and implement it across all of the Microsoft applications. So imagine opening Microsoft Excel and getting maybe a video tutorial of how to do something, or imagine opening Microsoft Outlook, which is Microsoft's email platform, and getting served the biography of somebody that you are maybe making an appointment with or emailing with. So that's kind of exciting. The other thing is LinkedIn is going to take its technology and incorporate it with Cortana. Cortana, if you don't know, is Microsoft's version of Siri in Apple iPad products and iPhone products. So Siri will be able to also engage, Cortana will be able to engage using LinkedIn's technology. Now, on that note, LinkedIn also owns Pulse, which is what powers its newsfeed. So they paid $90 million, and that gives them over 1.5 million publishers who feed into the into the Pulse electronic system. So that's become an important element of the LinkedIn experience. Just quick do's and don'ts. Obviously, we already mentioned that LinkedIn does not replace recruiters, and not every company is suitable to use LinkedIn as a marketing tool, obviously. If you are a company that sells products, especially consumer products, then LinkedIn may not be where you will find qualified leads. It really is more of a B2B marketing environment. The other thing that is important with LinkedIn is to have your own URL. LinkedIn doesn't necessarily spit out for you up front a URL that's user-friendly or that is even your company name, but you can customize your URL link to make sure that it is your company's name. And then obviously you want to link your LinkedIn with all of your other social media accounts so people can kind of use them across platforms. Okay, YouTube. So YouTube was started by former PayPal employees and then was bought by Google in 2006 for a mere, and I mean mere, $1.65 billion. It is the #2 search engine outside of Google, and while it's not a traditional search engine, obviously users of YouTube are looking for kind of video content as the result of their searches. Interestingly, before I get to this last bullet point, Google pays the majority of its income to the owners of the copyrights of all of the content that it shares. And so YouTube is really focusing on generating original content so that it doesn't have to pay out as much money for copyright. So they've launched something called YouTube Spaces in major cities all around the world, and these are basically studios where YouTube and its collaborators can create original content. So that's kind of exciting. Okay, how does YouTube make money? How do advertisers pay? And then how do copywriters make money? Well, advertisers on YouTube pay around $7.60 per 1,000 views. And if you are a YouTube partner, meaning that you own the copyright to something that's being published on YouTube, and you have, significant traffic, you will make about $2 per 1,000 views. But like I said, a majority of the revenue that YouTube takes in goes to the copyright holders of the content itself. Company channels are called one channel. And that's where you really brand, your YouTube experience for your users. And then the other thing about content on YouTube that's really important is that, video in itself isn't inherently searchable. So videos need to have video tags, and they need to be annotated and transcripted so that they're searchable, obviously, so that people can find the content that you're trying to promote. Okay. Next, we move on to Pinterest, and I just want to say a couple of quick things about Pinterest. The big news with Pinterest last year was the launch of buyable pins. So obviously we know what that means. It's people that are able to make purchases directly from Pinterest partners. And Pinterest at the end of last year launched a price monitor where Pinterest will basically alert users when prices for its partners' products drop. And then, of course, Pinterest is a primarily female audience. But the awesome new news this year is the idea of interactive shopping. And I think you can probably see this animated GIF on my PowerPoint. But this is where the technology basically can scan an image of multiple items. Here's a picture of a room. And then it can aggregate a list of website recommendations where to buy the items that you see in the image. So that's pretty impressive. And I think that will really, make Pinterest such a viable marketing opportunity for product-based businesses. Okay, Google Plus, like I mentioned, it's the smallest and maybe least used of the social media platforms that we have talked about, with barely 100 million users. Started by Google executives and then completely redesigned in November of 2015. And the idea was to make the Google Plus experience a lot less like Facebook and its news feed, and a lot more like Pinterest with its sort of boards and tiles, and just to kind of make it more of that type of experience. For a short time, Google Plus was integrated with YouTube, so you basically had to use both. One was required to use the other, and that kind of alienated users, and because of Google Plus's lack of popularity. So they have since been separated. Okay, Tumblr, started by David Karp. We're going to talk about Tumblr, and we're going to talk about Flickr, both purchased by Yahoo. So they're both part of the Yahoo portfolio. Tumblr falls somewhere between a blog and a microblog, meaning that it's not quite short form, microblog like Twitter, but it's not really the robust platform like a WordPress that you would, really focus on long form blogs. So it's somewhere in the middle. And bloggers on Tumblr are called tumble bloggers, or what they do is called tumble blogging. And their main tool is their dashboard. So the dashboard is basically where they control their, live feed of their posts. And the main engagement on Tumblr is called a reblog. And that's just basically sharing Tumblr content to other Tumblr users. Make sure you are able to identify what the reblog symbol looks like. Okay, it's kind of an ongoing arrow. And then finally, Flickr. So Flickr was started by a husband and wife team, Stuart Butterfield and Katrina Fake. And Katrina had developed a game called Never Ending, which was pretty cool because it was sort of like a chat room-based app that has live photo sharing capability. And Yahoo, by the way, bought Flickr, and then obviously Flickr became what it is. Okay, Flickr. So Flickr was launched by husband and wife team, Stuart Butterfield and Katrina Fake. And Katrina had developed a game called Never Ending. And it was really this sort of like multiplayer online game that had chat room. And the chat room had live photo sharing capability, which is kind of cool. And so Flickr has evolved since then to become really just focused on photo sharing. But Yahoo acquired Flickr, like we mentioned earlier, and then in 2013, they added the infinite scrolling format. So it kind of has this like futuristic look to it. And then finally, we have Google Analytics, and that was our training from last week. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit because I want you to be able to see, the specifics. Here we go. Okay, so in Google Analytics, the dashboard is that at a glance metric that shows you kind of all of the components that you're measuring on Google Analytics. And just to show you some specifics, so you've got sessions. Sessions are the number of visitors to your site, okay? Basically, each time they view the site, it's considered a session, or a visit would be another example. It shows you how many pages per session the typical user is looking at, and then the bounce rate. Bounce rate is how many, or the percent of viewers that only visit one page and then leave your site. Okay, now there are 4 specific uses of Google Analytics that I want you to be familiar with, and that's the bottom 4: audience. Let me get here: audience, acquisition, behavior, and conversions. Audience is basically exactly that. It's who your target audience is. It's geographically where are they coming from. It'll give you a sense of their age, things like that. Acquisition is where the traffic is coming from, meaning if they are referral traffic, what specific websites they're coming from. If they found you organically, it will tell you what search engine they used, and you will get at least some of the searches that the search words, key search words that they use to find your site, etc. Behavior is going to show you what they did while they're on your site. It will give you a sense of what pages they visited, in what order, etc. And then conversions can mean a lot of things for a lot of companies, but this is basically what you establish. So it could be somebody who comes to your website and stays for a certain period of time. It could be somebody who comes to your website and makes a purchase. It could be somebody who comes to your website and fills out a form. So this enables you to track your, your success in terms of conversions. Okay, so that leads me to the last order of business, which is our contest for best blog of the course. So let me remind everybody, please go to my blog, DallasSnobBlog.com, and the latest post of mine is all about America's Next Top Blog, Social Media Edition. If you haven't already, you'll read a little bit about the assignment, and you'll see a list of everybody's blogs. And at the very bottom, there'll be a SurveyMonkey link to go and vote. When you go to that SurveyMonkey link, the list of blogs are random, so they're in no particular order, and they will the order will be different every single time you vote. Okay? Just thought that'd be a much fairer way of structuring my survey. And that is everything. I encourage you guys to comment, to ask questions, to let me know if I can clarify anything for you. If you want to come and visit me to see some of my PowerPoint presentations, or if you need a hard copy of something, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm always happy to be of service to you, and I will see you the following Monday for our final exam in social media marketing. Thank you.